Hey, what's going on, guys? Is your host with the most, Underdone Toast here coming live. This is episode 25 of the Social Eclipse Podcast. I am joined by my co-host Z Buckner for a very applicable topic today. Buck, how you doing?
Dun-dun-dun-dun. I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. It was a busy Sunday. I was working all day, and which isn't a bad thing. I feel good. I got a lot done, so it's a good day. How are you?
Doing pretty good. It's weekend has gone by fast. I'm not excited for school tomorrow. However, I got spring break after this next week, so looking forward to that.
Ooh,
That'll be
cool.
nice. So, you know what's great about this podcast, Buck, is I feel like every
Many
single
things.
yeah, many things, of course, but every single introduction I give, I say, this is going to be relevant. And it's almost always like that because these topics that we speak of are things that are immediately interjecting themselves into our lives, whether it's the
Yeah,
social media, or butterfly effects, or the Pareto principle. I mean, just so our viewers and listeners understand, we're not just here yapping. You can take what we talk about and you can apply it to your lives and change your lives. Become the monk on top of the mountain.
yeah. And we do this for free. Well, not really. We got sponsors, but you
Yeah, they don't pay a whole lot,
know, no.
but the reason we do this isn't for the money, which is what our topic is today, actually.
Mm,
So, our topic for today is: are there situations where money supersedes morality? And
mm.
I'm glad you brought Buck is the one who brought up this topic, and I'm glad you brought it up because a while ago on one of our episodes, I brought up the question, how much is a human life worth? Or in other words, if an American was taken hostage and the US government couldn't do anything about it except for pay money, would the terrorist want $1 and the government would pay? Or what about $1 million? What about $1 billion? At what point would the government be willing to pay for that civilian back? And that is the question, is that human lives really do have a monetary value, in my opinion.
Yeah, they do. Um, I remember somebody just asked me, like, look, I mean, we were talking about just what you and I were talking about before the podcast, like all this, like this Israel stuff. Like, supposedly Israel's got all this, like, influence in our government. Somebody just asked me, like, look, I mean, can you blame them? Like, for any price, you'll support any cause, you'll go online and support any candidate or any country, right? And I was like, hmm, would I? You know? Good question.
This is a good question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so there are a few different pinpoints that we can hit, but I feel like one that comes to mind immediately for me is crime. So a lot of people who don't know much about crime or has never met someone who's gone to prison may think that people commit crimes just because they're evil and because doing crimes is just what they do. But in my mind, most of the time when someone commits a crime, it's because they have unmet needs. If you decide
Mm,
to rob a bank, it's not because they're doing it for fun or because they're evil or greedy. But a lot of the time, it's because they're desperate for money. Maybe it's to feed their family, or maybe it's just for themselves. But it's usually because they're desperate. Okay. And you can apply that to almost any crime out there. Assault, maybe the unmet need is that you're feeling like you're being judged or that you're looking weak, and that's what triggers you to start fighting someone. I mean, that's an unmet need that you're having. So that's, in my opinion, why crimes happen for the most part, unless you're some kind of psycho killer who just likes to kill for fun. And so
yeah,
so the
go ahead.
so the question that I'm trying to think of is if stealing food like saves your children from starving, then in that case, should money or the lack of it override morality or the law?
Should money or the lack of it override morality or the law?
Yeah,
Or do you
like
mean the other way around?
um should the lack of money override morality? So we could put ourselves in this situation. Let's say that I'm a dad of two children. They're starving. I have no money. Is it is it okay, depending on who you ask, is it okay for me to steal because it's for a good reason?
I would argue, I mean, you're still obviously breaking the law, which is still wrong, you know. But I would argue that the simple nature of right and wrong is kind of lost when it comes to decisions that are made out of desperation or survival, or, it's like not as black and white, it's not as simple as we would suggest. Um, I'm not sure why, but I feel like uh, we're kind of raised to believe that things are right or they are wrong. It's very cut and dry. And consequences are also the same way, which is very interesting. But when they say punishment should fit the crime, they don't really take into account motive. They don't take into account it's not situational. I would argue it should be, which is kind of why we in America we have juries, you know. Um, but even then, you can still consider uh, it's hard to consider the intricacies of what somebody's actually going through and why they make a decision that they make. So I'm not sure that that supersedes the crime itself, or it excuses it, or it supersedes any decision you might make. But uh, we are certainly driven by our situation. That's why we make our choices. It's not as much we don't want to break the rules. We're doing it for the sake of breaking the rules, or it's never as simple as just I want common gain at the expense of somebody else. There's usually another reason.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost never black and white. I haven't gotten to this point yet because my parents, my children are old enough, but I know that, as I raise my kids, I'm going to be telling them, "Oh, lying is wrong, lying is wrong, lying is wrong." And then at some point in our lives, probably multiple times, they're going to catch me lying. And I'm going to have to explain myself. I'm going to be like, well, yeah, most of the time lying is wrong, but in this certain situation, I didn't want to talk to the salesman, or I didn't want to give this hobo money, or whatever
Mm,
else. I mean, it's never black and white. And I know that a UFC fighter was just released from jail after being in there for like 2 years, not too long ago. And the reason he was in jail in the first place is because he killed someone who had like raped their kid or something. So, yeah, and like you said, that's the reason why we have juries. It's because, yeah, he did commit murder, but outside of the law, you could say that it was for a justified reason. He still had to pay his punishment. He still had to pay his dues because he did commit murder, and that's still against the law, no matter how you twist it. But he got a very light sentence concerning the facts because of the situation itself. And I'm sure that money can play a part in that also, depending on what the crime is.
yeah, man, it gets into the whole situation of justice. Before I get into that, though, um, just briefly, I like what you said about your kids. Thinking about like how I would teach my kids this. But I think it's okay that kind of we approach it as a right and wrong, black and white at a young age. I think that's all they can understand. And I think it's effective. Like lying is not okay. I think that's okay to teach your kids, even though, of course, there are situations where we will lie and we'll justify that, and it may or may not be okay. Those kind of, those, what's the word? I guess, intricacies of those decisions are something a kid's not really going to understand. They're not going to know when to apply that and when it is okay and like what the difference is between that and then blatantly lying. So I feel like you need to give their brain a little bit more time to develop. So I don't think there's anything wrong with teaching things as right or wrong until a certain age. But as far as the justice system is concerned, I find that super interesting because even as adults, we live very short lives. We dispense justice on other people just based on our own experiences and like our own sense of morality. And like juries are very rarely, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like juries are very rarely unanimous, and which I guess implies that we make mistakes, or maybe it just simply implies that we just don't agree. But justice is like you know, something is either right or it's wrong, or there is a fitting punishment, even if it's somewhere in between. Like that is the just way of dealing with a certain situation. It is the punishment that fits the crime. And it seems like most of the time we can never agree on what that is,
Yeah. I do have to correct you.
understandably so.
I do have to correct you on one thing, Buck.
Okay.
Do you know what a hung jury is?
Yeah, it's when they tie, right? Or
It's
no, it's
when
not. It's when there's like, they have to be unanimous. You're right. I forgot about that. Is
yeah,
that
so,
true, or is it just most of it?
yeah, so I was just gonna say that usually, not usually, always in juries it has to be unanimous. If there's even one person
Right.
who's not willing to vote along with the rest of the group, then it's considered a hung jury or a mistrial.
Right. But I think my point still stands. Isn't it true that most cases have hung juries, and there's a retrial, like there's then they go back in, and like it's a multi-step process. I think it's very rare that it's unanimous on the first vote. Am I wrong?
I've always understood that most of the time it is unanimous on the first vote, but
It is. Okay, I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong, but even still, I still find it interesting that, like, cases can be so. I've never sat in on a trial. I've watched a few, but like, there's so many factors at play usually, in which case that's why they need a jury in the first place. It's crazy to me that even 10 people or 20 people, and supposedly the more people you have, the more just it is. Those people can like perfectly decide somebody's fate based on their motive and the circumstances that surrounded the crime. It makes me think of the movie 12 Angry Men. I'm going to kind of spoil it, kind of. At the end of the movie, they don't really figure out whether he's innocent or not, which I just noticed watching it a second time. Sure, they reach a decision, but like we never really find out whether the kid murdered the guy or not. That's not really the point of the film. And so I thought that was a uh, clever thing to do in that film, that they didn't really reveal that much. And because that's how it is in real life. You know what I mean? We can't go back in time and like be a fly on the wall and actually witness a crime most of the time, unless there were cameras or some sort of evidence. So
yeah, we certainly can't have a perfect justice system no matter what we do, but I do like the way that's set up with the jury because obviously way back in the day you had a single judge and you would really hope that you caught him on in a good mood that day if you're the one being sentenced or
yeah,
tried. I tried and sentenced by that judge. But yeah, that's a great movie. And I've always told myself that if I were ever placed on a jury in a really high importance case, like someone was going to death row, I would always say that I wouldn't be on the jury because I don't think I could take that much responsibility.
hmm,
Maybe that's a bad idea of me because if it's not me sitting in that chair, then it's going to be someone else, and it could be someone really stupid. But
yeah,
you know, I in the law, it's always proven innocent, or excuse me, it's always presumed innocent until proven guilty. And I feel like
supposedly.
supposedly, but when it comes to things like the death sentence, I feel like you, especially in those situations, need to have hard proof because if you accidentally kill someone, or that's the wrong way to put it, but if you kill someone and they were actually innocent, then like, are you really going to be able to ever forgive yourself for something like that? It seems like a very large weight that would be on my shoulders.
Yeah, we're going on a bit of a tangent, so we got to rein it back in. But I want to say this much: I don't really believe in the innocent until proven guilty. Let me clarify. Let me clarify. I believe in it. I think it's a good. I think it's a good policy. I don't think humans really can do that. Do you get me? I feel like we always have personal biases, whether we want to or not. I think it's very hard not to. And so I've always wondered, like, how, like, if I've never sat on a jury, but like, how I would like, like, listen to the events and observe purely in an unbiased manner without having some sort of biases, you know. Um, I find that also very fascinating because we always have some predetermined notion about something that goes on. You know, when we receive information, we make an assumption or an inference on like the morality of that situation or why things happened the way they did. So yeah, I think it's very hard to remain unbiased.
I know that one thing that they do to try and tackle that is they get very diverse juries. So
True, true.
I remember back when when funny enough our current president was being tried.
Mm,
I remember that they released some of the statistics of the jurors, and one of them was
yeah,
like, what social medias do they use? But the reason that they released that information without actually divulging the names and personal information of the jurors was to show that this was a broad spectrum of people. You know, it wasn't all liberals, it wasn't all conservatives, it wasn't all black people, it wasn't all white people. You know, they made sure it was like as diverse as possible. So, like, you're totally right. There's no way for us, because we're humans, there's no way for us to look at a situation and be completely unbiased. But I know that that's one of the ways that they try and improve it.
yeah,
They got to, you know what they got
yeah.
to
They
do?
try to.
They got to start having
What?
Soul.
They got a brainwash?
No, they got to start having Soul be our lawyer, juror, judge,
No, no,
the
no,
whole
no, no,
shebang.
no, no.
Purely
The
just data,
jury
pure
is
data.
the jury is each AI. They put all of them, all the models.
Ooh, I like that
They all got
actually.
they all got to agree unanimously.
You know what?
uh,
We're joking,
mm,
obviously, but I bet if they did that, then the percentage rate of people who are wrongly convicted would go down.
probably would go down. Probably, yeah,
So
yeah,
it may seem kind of absurd, but at the same time, if we were to implement this, it would save tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of people over the years from going to jail. Or it would
yeah.
put people in jail who would have otherwise gotten away.
True. But hey, at what point do we start letting machines put us to death? Like make that decision. I can see a hybrid system where maybe in like civil cases they use AI or whatever, but in the big like Supreme Courts, I don't think it would be right. I don't know where to
Yeah.
draw that line, but just off the top of my head, it just seems like what it would be the best way to go about that. Not that I support doing it at all, but
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, we so we're on the topic of does money supersede morality? Um, so I guess like we said, there's we have biases, we have there's intricacies on the decisions we make and why we do what we do, but at what point does our where's the line for each person? Like, is it possible to totally be innocent of um, being like bought out? Is there anyone who could truly say there is no price, for this or for that? Um, what do you think?
I think you'd be few and far between.
Hmm.
And most people, if you were to give them a survey and it's like, hey, we offer you $50,000 to do something immoral, then on paper, a
Hmm.
lot of people are going to say, no, I wouldn't do that. I'd stick to my guns and do what's right. But if they were
Hmm.
actually in that situation, I bet you more people than not would fold. Be like, hey, you know
Really?
what? I'm going to break my moral code just this one time because 50,000 bucks is a lot of money and I need that money more than keeping my moral code.
I would agree with you. I think there are people who exist who would keep their moral code no matter the price. I think you're right. I don't think it's the majority. But the sad thing is, you never know until you know, right? That's one of those things you can always say, and I'm sure a lot of people who would flip like genuinely believed that they would not. You know what I mean? Like they were being honest. And so you never know. But the scary thing about that, if that's true, is, think about how many people not just have money, but have the influence to buy out other people or, to push certain agendas with their money. Um, that's pretty scary to think about.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I feel like that's one huge reason why everyone considers politics to be corrupt. It's like, yeah, for us, average day people who are going to work and raising families, yeah, we don't really run into the situations where we're offered vast amounts of money to do something immoral. But if you're high up on the scale and you have a lot of control over what happens in the future in American society, then I bet you anything. You got CEOs, you got other international countries coming to you, offering you money to have you do something that is not in the best interest of the American people or just immorality. But I mean, it's got to happen to them all the time with how much power they have.
Yeah. Not to mention, like, if it's true that most people can be corrupted, um, all you have to do if you got money is find whoever's useful. Which can't be that hard. If most of us are just average, we don't have as much money, then you're picking up that person. You're elevating them to a level they've never seen before, and that's very enticing. So to you, everyone else underneath you is useful somehow. You can get anybody, you can corrupt anybody. You've got billions of people to choose from. Um, so it can't be that hard, right?
Right. So
So money is a powerful thing, very, very, very powerful thing. I think anybody who disagrees and says we put too much stock in how much power money has, I think is kidding themselves.
money makes the world go round. It's the
Hmm.
economy, stupid.
Hmm.
I okay, I apologize for getting off of the money topic a little bit, but I promise it's relevant.
Yeah.
Batman.
Batman.
Batman. Let's think about his moral code. He captures the Joker over and over. I don't know how many times in the comics, but it's probably dozens. And his moral code is he never kills, right? So he always captures the
Hmm.
Joker, throws him in jail, never kills him. But he does this knowing that the Joker's going to escape again and kill other people. So by not killing the Joker, Batman's essentially letting more people die. Okay.
True.
So the reason I bring this up is because you could twist this in all sorts of ways where we think, hey, is it okay to every once in a while overstep what we believe to be moral in order to save people or for the greater good? I I've definitely been on Reddit too much recently, and I do not I'm just gonna say this right away. I do not agree with this. But I know that a lot of people on there say that what's his name? Luigi Mandoni?
Mangione or something.
Mangione, whatever. Luigi shooting and killing the CEO of Health
Uh, uh, um, United
United
Healthcare.
Health. Yeah, United
Yeah.
Healthcare. A lot of people on there believe that he did the right thing. And
Mm.
you could say that killing is wrong. You could say that it's against the law. You could say that there should be no circumstance in which you ever kill someone. But there's a lot of people on there who say, hey, that's an exception. Like he just killed someone who was far more evil because the person who was killed was essentially killing tens of thousands of people by denying them health care.
Hmm.
So the reason I bring up both of those examples is because there are circumstances in which we have a strong, straight moral code, and it might still be best to overstep those things, whether that's in terms of money or violence or whatever else. There are going to be situations where maybe it's best to go outside of that.
Yeah. Is there a question in there? You gave me a lot to think about here.
Sorry, I
I
could
just
I could keep you on if you need me to ask a question.
well, no, I don't need you to ask a question. You have me thinking. That was very thought provoking. I just watched the Batman, the newer one, and
Twilight,
it is what's that?
Edward?
Yeah, with Edward in it. Spoilers. Um, the Riddler is pretty much like his whole plan is basically Luigi's plan. Like he doesn't really kill anyone who wasn't like super corrupt, and he believes he's doing the right thing, as does every villain. And he even justifies himself to Batman. He's like, "Hey, you and I are like the same person. Like we're both driven by vengeance, you know." And the Batman's like, right, Edward's like, "What are you talking about? I've got a moral code and this." And it turns out, he's not really. He's still feared by people. He's going about it with vengeance on his mind, And pretty much Batman learns in the film that uh, the best way to inspire change isn't really by taking out all these big corrupt people, and because in turn that inspires other people to violence. And the best way to do it is to cultivate hope and real change. Um, I feel like we see that a lot nowadays because things are so radicalized, we're so divided, and it's certainly a division problem, when we feel like there's no hope left, there's not much to do about it. And so we come to, extreme situations call for extreme measures, and violence is the easy way to do that. So it is an interesting conversation. It's probably a whole other podcast topic in itself, but uh, yeah, the sad thing is that for the large majority of us, we don't have money, you know. So how do we make a change? Like if money's the easy way to do it, that's the quickest way to gain influence. Well, we're all just trying to survive, Like what can we do about it? Uh, for a large portion of us, I know me, certainly, I feel pretty helpless, It's almost just like I'm gonna get mine. Like I got to do what I got to do, and sure, I'll help other people when I can, but most of the time, like it's just me. That's certainly how I felt. So it's a little debilitating, to say the least.
Yeah, I've always said that you won't see major change in America until people start getting hungry, because when people start getting hungry, then that's when people start getting desperate.
Yeah, 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 true.
In America right now, we have a pretty controversial administration, and so you see a lot of people out there protesting, but you don't see anything like civil war. You don't see any major governmental disruptions. I mean,
Hmm.
things are pretty much going on as normal, and that's because people still have stable jobs with income, they still have families to take care of. But if you take away all that, then that's where people get desperate. So, yeah,
It's true.
until then though, like we all know that we're sheep. We all know that the people at the top have the money and the power, but we're we're kind of okay with that. We're not going to ruin our own lives to try and change
True.
future generations because we are all inherently selfish, as we have proved in a previous podcast episode.
That's true. That's true. It is hard to know what to do, because I agree. Like you look at what like the Luigi situation. It's like, yeah, like I don't think I agree with that. That's not the way to go about things. But on the other hand, like you think about like the revolution, how America even became a country in the first place, like there had to be a revolt. Like certainly that wasn't just a self-defense thing, like there are consequences to actions, and it seems like on a fundamental level, that was the only way we could have gained our independence in the first place. So, not that I'm excusing like what's going on and like the mentality of like offing these people who have all this influence, but like, I don't know, man. Like, it seems like when you look back in history and people like make a change, it has to be sizable, you know? It almost feels like all this little stuff, like protesting and whatnot, like none of it has an effect. So I can't blame people for like at least thinking about like extreme things. I hate to say it, like I think it's wrong to like take the next step and do it, but you know, I don't know. Am I making any sort of sense here, or am I sounding crazy?
No, you're right. I think that's why the most extreme people are also the most violent. It's because in
Yeah,
their world, as time goes on, especially with politics, I've come to realize that everyone really does live in their own reality, depending on what kind of media
yeah,
you consume, depending on your biases and what side you're on. Like you're gonna look at the same exact situation as someone on the opposite in the opposite aisle, and your brain is going to comprehend it differently so that it is more favorable towards you. Okay. And
yeah.
so the reason I bring that up is because there are people who look at something like our current administration and legit think that we're living under a Nazi regime. And
Mm,
I don't blame them if they truly believe that we're under a Nazi regime and the person at the top is just like Adolf Hitler. Then I don't blame them if they're going to try and do something violent or extreme or become a martyr, because that is what we do as humans. In extreme circumstances, we get violent.
and I think there's a distinction between what we're saying, right? We don't blame these people for doing that, but that doesn't make it right. You know what I mean? Like those are two different things. And so even since the beginning of the podcast, like I think the thing we're routing around is like there's a difference between what is right and what is wrong. Like that isn't there is an objective reality on like, our morals, like and our ethics. Like this is right and this is wrong. Like that certainly that line exists, but the reasons for which somebody makes that decision, um, it doesn't justify what's going on, but perhaps it's different from person to person, and thereby maybe it should be treated as such. Maybe the treatment of one person doing one thing and another person doing the exact same thing, but they do it for different reasons, like reasons that are not really in their control. Maybe their punishment or their treatment should be different.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that brings me to a question that's been on my mind a little bit. So, going back, taking it back to money in particular, do you think we all like to say that billionaires are always immoral and they think that they can do anything because they have money? But do you
Yeah,
think
and this
that
is a
there's
communist podcast.
we are pretty communist, not gonna lie. We're pretty anti-billionaire on here. Um, but
Yeah.
that leads me to the question, is that right of us to do, or is there a difference between survival driven morality breaking and greed driven morality breaking? Because
Yeah, no, I think there's a difference.
in both situations, you're still breaking moral codes. So does that make it
Yes.
any more right on depending why you're doing it?
Yeah, I don't know where the line is, but and I guess the line changes depending on a lot of factors, like, even just as simple as the economy. But I think I think you nailed it. There's survivors, there's surviving, and there's greed. Greed is gluttonous, it's wanting more despite the fact that you already have enough. Whereas survival is just getting yours, getting what getting just enough to survive. Um, I don't think I told you, and this is definitely, we should talk about this later. But have you heard of the movie The Platform?
Yeah, I've watched it. Great movie.
Have you? Yeah. So I just watched it last week with my girlfriend. Blown away. I thought it was going to be garbage. I was like, this is probably just one of those stupid, like, just random one-off like foreign films.
There's a
I was
second one.
shocked. There is. We watched both, yeah. And I was shocked at just like how thought-provoking the film is. Like, and again, we could, if you've seen this, we should do a podcast on this. So I won't give away too much, but I will say that movie has a lot to do with the themes of greed versus just surviving, and like the placement of where you are in society and what that implies on the people above you and the people below you, quite literally in that film. And for me, my girlfriend and I really talked about this for a while, but one of the main themes of the film really is greed. And because, when you're at the top, the reason so much of us hate, the people up there is because they take more than they really need. Um, and that's what makes it greed. They're taking so much because of this innate fear. And you're right, there is an innate fear that they will lose what they have. I've heard many. I think Mark Cuban. I think I heard him one time. He's a billionaire. Someone asked him, "What's your biggest fear?" And he straight up said, "He's like, losing my position." And he didn't say that like that, my position of power, but he's like, being poor again is basically what he said. And so yeah, like that is certainly a justifiable fear that I think every human has. Losing their place in society and being, you desperate again. But I don't know. I don't think you can take away from the objective fact that there are people who just take more than what they really need. It's at the expense of somebody else. And in my opinion, that's morally wrong. That's more than just desperation.
Yeah, and I also won't spoil anything for that movie because great movie. But what I will say that is that in the beginning, when they're trying to fix the problem, they do it by talking to other people, and
Yeah.
nobody listens. In fact, the main character I think gets pooped on, which was pretty funny. And eventually, in order to make any change, they have to resort to violence. And
Yeah.
that I think that goes back to a little bit to what we were just saying is like these people who are greedy, they're so afraid of losing their power. They don't want to be an average Joe. Like they want to stay a multi-billionaire, and so they're not going to change that unless it's through force, basically.
Mhm. Yeah. So I guess the answer to your question, I really do believe that there is a line. It might be a blurry line, but I think survivorship or the will to survive is different than greed. And certainly, you can get greedy because, well, I don't think you can get greedy because of a fear of losing your place in society. At that point, I don't think it would be greed. I think you're still desperate at a certain point. I think greed is when you've totally lost fact of like you are fine, and at that point it's just pure, you know, it's selfish. That the it's just driven by a selfless act or a selfish act at that point, which makes it wrong. And as I said before, like other people are actively being hurt by your actions. So yeah, I definitely think there's a difference there.
One of my favorite movies as a kid, even maybe even to this day, I haven't watched it in a while. Robin Hood. And the funny thing
The
is,
cartoon,
yeah, I like the cartoon one in particular with the
yeah,
animals. Everybody loves that movie, and nobody views Robin Hood as evil. Everybody views
true,
the king as evil. And
true.
even though Robin Hood is constantly stealing from the king, since he's dispersing it and giving it to the poor, who are basically being stolen from by the king due to his high taxes, but which is technically legal, because he's doing that, everyone views Robin Hood as the good guy and the king as the bad guy. And if you need a more modern example, I can picture this just an extreme situation. Maybe there's a person who's very poor and he sees the safe to Elon Musk's bank open and nobody's guarding it and he needs to feed his family. That's a lot different of a situation than if Elon Musk were to see a poor family's bank that's open and decides to go take $100 a
Oh
foot.
yeah.
So
Here's
I completely
Yeah, go ahead.
agree that even though in both situations it is technically stealing, morality is so much more broad than just that line.
It's true. I I'm riding a thin line here, but I'm gonna bear with me. Bear with me.
Kami.
Let's say, because in your Robin Hood example, despite the fact that Robin Hood is clearly breaking the law, he is only kind of balancing in his mind um, the immorality of John, King John taking, or is it Prince John, whatever, Prince John taking the money uh, gluttonously, so from the people, and he's just taking that back and giving it back to the people. So, there's like there's no net positive or negative for John other than his immoral actions were just reversed. You know what I'm saying? Whereas someone like Luigi, in a real life scenario, he doesn't really, I don't want to say avenge, but he doesn't balance the scales of justice by giving, by somehow liberating the people who have been wronged by United Healthcare and giving them their money back, or, you know, uh, instead he decides to kill the guy, right? If there were some sort of situation where Luigi could illegally, avenge these people who United have wronged at the expense of the United Healthcare CEO, however that might be, money or whatever, would you call that morally correct? I know that's a very convoluted analogy, but do you get my point?
Yeah. Um,
Yeah,
would I call that morally correct? Yeah, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I'll let you go first, Buck.
I would say so. And I think it's very similar. You're a much more succinct person than I am. Your Elon Musk analogy is good. I don't think there's any way a common person could do that perfectly. Like, you know what I mean? Do it in a perfect manner. How do I know exactly how much to steal from Elon Musk to give back to the people he's wronged or whatever? That's a bit fantastical. That's where the Robin Hood cartoon kind of, that's the fantasy element of it. But if there were a way to perfectly do that, and a common man were to go do that, and I would consider that morally correct. Yeah, be very difficult to do, but even if it were to supersede the law at that point, I would say that that is morally correct. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I suppose I would agree with you on that. Because the reasoning behind it in the first place is because of immoral reasoning. I mean,
Yes.
these people lost money due to immoral reasons. So I hate to say that you should take a bad situation and do something bad in order to correct it, but
Mm.
that's basically what you would have to do.
Yeah, I don't see any other way. I don't think the law should protect one person over another's, or I'm sorry, I don't think the law should protect one person's immoral actions, but not protect the others. You know what I mean?
Right.
Especially when the one person is doing it at the expense of many, many, many people. I'm not sure how I'd feel if it was like a one-to-one scenario. I guess it would be the same. Yeah, it would probably be the same. But
Yeah, so obviously we want to avoid two wrongs making a right, but yeah, in order to
right,
fix a situation like that, then yeah, you've already been wronged, an eye for an eye, as they say. Just take it back.
yeah,
Just take it back, and then
yeah.
you're even.
I think the difference between like the Revolutionary War versus like what Luigi did, like what is killing the CEO, United Healthcare guy? How is that gonna like, right to all these wrongs? How is it gonna liberate all the people who have been wronged? Um, Whereas like killing Hitler, you know what I mean, was probably a morally good thing to do because that act literally liberated hundreds of thousands of, you know, Jews, and not to mention all the people that were dying in the war. So And again, this is all semi-anecdotal, but perhaps that's the way we need to be seeing things like this.
Yeah, that's exactly how I view the Luigi situation. It's like if you're killing somebody in order to undo all that they've done or prevent, oh, well, you know what? Maybe he's preventing stuff from the future. Not really though, because the next person in line just hopped right back
Yeah,
up and kept doing the same thing. But
true.
that's
And you would need to be able to prove that you knew that that was going to happen, and that would be very hard to prove in the case of United Healthcare. You know what I mean? As
yeah,
opposed to a dictator who's basically running a world war, right?
yeah. But
So,
in Luigi's situation, it seems like he killed the CEO because he was angry. And maybe he was
mm,
justified in being angry, but the fact is you took someone's life without without any positive impact on the world. So,
right.
yeah, so in that light, I would say that it's immoral. Now, you could dig deeper into it and say that he was raising awareness, or maybe it was just that CEO, but we won't get too deep into that. But I think that's a great point that you made up.
Mm. So, is there any situation where I think we've agreed that gluttony and greed does not supersede morality, but is there any situation where money superseding morality can be justified? You know, or is morality the end all be all? Like if this is right or it's wrong. I guess that's a weird way of asking that, but like
So,
you know what I
like,
mean? Like
does morality trump everything, basically, is what you're asking?
yeah, pretty much. Does morality trump everything? And you know, is there any like viable excuse for someone to maybe sell out their morality for money? If say, you know, here's a situation to portray my question. Let's say a presidential candidate comes up to you and your family is starving, right? And he's like, look, like it's not greed, it's not immorality. I will get your family back on your feet and I'll pay everything for them. You know, not no, I'm not going to make you rich. I'm just going to make it so you survive for the next 5 years. But you have a lot of influence. You have a big YouTube channel. You have to go on and you have to campaign for me, right? In that case, there's no greed involved. You're simply just trying to survive. And not just you, you're doing it for your family. So you have a responsibility, right? But what you are doing is immorally wrong. Let's say this presidential candidate is like a scumbag or whatever. Um, are you justified in doing that? Like, is it,
Mm,
at that point, is it even immoral at all? You know?
yeah, no, that's a really good example because that's true. On one hand, it's morally you should be supporting your family and helping them survive, but on the other hand, morally you shouldn't be encouraging and helping a corrupt politician. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like there's no right answer there. No matter what you do, somebody's gonna
Mm-hmm.
suffer. So I guess it's just depending on
Right.
how that suffering's gonna, like, which one's gonna be tipping the scale more.
True. Yeah. Like, like, is this politician going to hurt more than, like, let's say there's five people in your family, you know, maybe that's the way you do it if it's truly one to one. It never is. You know, we've talked about in past podcasts how you always weigh your family's life more than someone else that you don't even know, right? But like objectively, perhaps that's how you weigh it. I'm not sure there's a right or wrong answer, but I will say I would not judge the man for saying yes to something like that. You know what I mean? But
Right.
I feel like that's a very rare case scenario. I feel like 99% of the time, anybody who's being bribed out or, you know, greed is superseding the morality, like it is purely an immoral thing. I mean, how can it not be with the amount of money that's being thrown around at these people anyway? You know,
Right.
so
I remember when we did our trolley problem episode, my since we went over so many different situations, I something I kind of learned about myself was I would always resort to whichever impact has the least amount of damage to like humanity, if that makes sense.
yeah,
So
yeah,
maybe we were talking about a trolley problem where it's somebody with their nuclear launch codes and they're about to nuke the entire world versus Adolf Hitler or something. And I would look at a situation like that and I'd be like, well, it's pretty easy. Like either 100 million people die or 7 billion people die. So, and that's what I did for every situation. I tried to take emotion out of it as much as possible and view it analytically. Now that's not going to be perfect when my personal life is at hand, because
Mhm.
I'm going to be trying to protect my family and the ones I care about a lot more than strangers. But yeah, that's what I always try to do when it comes to those moral situations, and even if it's including money or corrupt politicians, I feel like.
Yeah, yeah. Is there further than that? Is there, so let's say your family's just surviving, but you want a better life to them, or you want a better life for them. Is there another level beyond just being able to eat, and having a roof over your head versus, wanting to give your family a good life? Is the morality of making a decision and or selling out for greed? Is it less of a what's the word I'm looking for here?
Desperation.
Um, no, okay, it's not desperation at that point, but is there any sort of justification in just wanting to give your family a better life, or is it less justified?
Yeah,
Would
no,
you judge the man harsher for doing something like that versus the man that was just trying to feed their family?
yeah, I think I would. Um, you bring up a good point. It's like where's the line that's drawn? Because if your
Hmm.
family is literally starving, like they are gonna die soon. They have a terrible life, and you have the opportunity to steal from a billionaire who's not gonna even notice. Then everyone's gonna agree, yeah, it's fine. You can take from that guy, and you're saving your family. But if you had a different situation where maybe you hacked into their bank account and you're getting $50,000 a month, then you get that first 50,000, you're like, hey, we're not starving anymore. And then maybe you convince yourself, you're like, okay, we'll just get another 50,000 because we got to get on our feet. We need some kind of shelter. So then you get another 50,000, and then you push it and push it and push it. And then eventually you've stolen like 3 million bucks from this guy. There's definitely a point in there where you say, okay, like this has gone from survivability to greed. And that's going to depend on the circumstances, but I think that line is what makes it, for me at least, immoral, or excuse me, it goes from moral to immoral.
Mm. You know what I just realized, dude? That line is probably different for everyone. Like, it sounds weird to us, but like survivorship is probably way different. Like, if you ask Elon Musk, like, genuinely, he probably would think surviving is like way higher than you and I being like what we think is like rich. You get me? Like, the baseline is probably way different depending on who you ask. Maybe not within our social circle, the people we know, but I bet you there's a lot of people, when they talk about they're afraid of like losing their money or their power, like they're genuinely probably like they would be terrified to be like where you and I are today, or even like our parents, who are a little bit better off. And they would probably seriously consider like that barely surviving. And so maybe that's why they justify it in their heads. Whereas we just see it as greed.
Yeah. I mean, we're living completely different lives. Maybe once you become a billionaire, yeah, that becomes your everyday life. It's not like you do it for a few days and then you go back to normal life for a few days. You are constantly being a billionaire. You don't want to go back,
Hmm.
yeah, even if to us it's just normal life. Maybe we really are
Yeah.
scum. Maybe I really am scum.
Maybe I'm garbage.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
great idea for anyone out there who's into programming is make a game like the trolley problem, except instead of putting two people on train tracks, have it be that you're slowly stealing money from someone who's rich, and
Ooh.
measure how far some people will go until they eventually say, okay, I have enough money. Because I would be interested. You know
Mm.
what? After this episode, maybe Buck and I will do that with ChatGPT really quick because I'm interested. I bet you're right. I bet there'd be big differences depending on the person taking it and how much money they would take before they say that enough is enough.
I forgot the AI can like code simple games like that pretty fast now, can it?
Yeah, yeah, I'll have to try it out.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We could make it kind of like that coin game we were playing a couple months ago.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that would be cool. I think it's a great idea. I bet the results would vary big time.
yeah, yeah. We'll have to
You
mess
know,
with that.
my standards have definitely changed. I feel like they've gone down recently. Like, you know, understandably so. Like as a kid or even like a young adult, you're like you have a vision for where you're going to be in life, and not to mention like the just the way the world's been like recently. Like not to be a doomer, but like you know, my parents could afford a house at 30 and I can't. So it's just like our standards have definitely changed, even just in the past couple of years. And not in like a depressing sense, but even just the past couple of years, I've had to like readjust like what I see as, you know, happiness, you know, like what I need to be happy. And that's something everybody should really do. But like, if you look at it from a numerical standpoint, like from a monetary standpoint, I've definitely lowered my standards on like what I need to survive and what I need to, you know, just what my goals are in the near term. So yeah, everybody deals with that.
Yeah, my wife and we're pretty fiscally minded, but it's more so in the sense that we hate the anxiety and the unknown of things like debt and not having a lot of money. Because whenever we talk about our future career and like where we're going to live, it's never follow the money. Even though I hear that all the time, I always hear people saying like, "Hey, if you're offered a higher paying job, then you're going to take that job." But for us,
Mm,
it always seems like, no, it's going to be more about like where we're living or how much I enjoy my job because yeah, some people will follow the money and probably make a lot more than I do, but it's just never been a big goal of ours to make as much money as possible in life. We just want a
yeah.
home. We want to be able to raise a few kids. We want to be able to retire at 60 or 65. And it's like I don't feel like that's a whole lot to ask for.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've kind of noticed that like with our generation, uh, we've kind of, I feel like we prioritize that a bit more. Um, which is interesting because you'd think that like if we I don't want to be like woe is me, like we have it harder, but like if things truly are harder for us like monetary wise, you know, like financially, you'd think it'd go the other way around, you know, like we would follow the money more because we're more desperate. But I don't know, maybe it's just my little echo chamber, but I feel like it's kind of more so that we kind of have learned to value. I really enjoy this job, you know, I really enjoy my time, I really enjoy, you know, the people that I work with and my work-life balance. Um, yeah, I feel like that's a lot of people are prioritizing that a lot more from what I've seen, which I agree. I think for me, I'm totally with you. That's, you know, you can put a value on that for sure. You know, you can certainly put a value on a good work-life balance versus a job that maybe pays a little bit more, but you know, maybe the commute's a lot longer, so you lose free time or whatever it might be.
Yeah, we had a similar podcast maybe a couple months ago, but I'm just gonna hit on it really quick. But does money change people or does it more like reveal who they really are?
Hmm. You asking me right now?
Yes, sir.
I think it does both, but if you really want me to, that's a boring answer. So if you want me to choose one, I think it more changes people, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd agree. I hear about people who win the lottery, like 60 or 70% of them go bankrupt within a year or something crazy like that. And then you look
Yeah.
at their life before winning the lottery, and a lot of the time they were doing just fine. They weren't an addict or they weren't going crazy or homeless or whatever else was going on. So, Yeah, I've always said
Yeah,
that if I were to win the lottery, the first thing I would do would be hire a like expert financial advisor who deals specifically with people who get large inheritances because
yeah,
I bet there's something just psychologically that happens when you get a lot of money, especially if it's quickly, that makes you think differently, make you look at money differently, makes you look at valuables differently, and
yep,
maybe it's unhealthy.
yeah. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it really rewires your brain, to be honest. Um, yeah, I've spent a lot of time. My girlfriend's from the Philippines, and so I've been over there a couple times. It's a whole different world, dude. Like, you cannot fathom that unless you've been in it. Like, you can try your hardest and do all your research, but like being in it is just a whole different experience. In a lot of ways, it has its upsides. You know, they're really humble people, but it's totally different. Like the way they see money and the way they see work and like the way they see their free time and yeah, it's so different over there. And I've always wondered like if she was to come over here and we were to live together in the US, like how she would see, it different over here from a finances perspective. Would she be the kind that's super fiscal or maybe it could be the opposite, like, oh, we got all this money now and this. Um, so money definitely rewires your brain. And I think that's a very applicable point to, the topic of the podcast because we are kind of slave to the system in a certain sense, and
And we're okay
to
with
be
it.
able to say that, yeah, and we're okay with it, and to be able to, if we're all going to say that that would not corrupt us, I think most of us would be lying. I don't think most of us would be lying intentionally, but you're right. Money changes you more than we would care to admit. Because who doesn't want to have a better life?
Yeah, if I could give one big piece of advice to like all Americans, if for whatever reason I was chosen to give one piece of advice, I think one of my top choices would be advising people to travel to a third world country for like a week or two
No,
because I went down to Peru to help
oh,
fight
true. I
COVID.
forgot.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
help fight COVID in summer of 2021. And it's like here in America, everywhere I go in a medical facility, super nice, always upkept. Doctors are really highly trained, so are the nurses, medical assistants. Dude, in Peru, I was assigned to like this shack where people would come in and deal with these nurses, and there were literally wild dogs running in and out of the shack. Like it was that
Wow.
poorly kept just because it was in an area where there wasn't very much money flowing. But it definitely opened my
Yeah.
eyes, and I think it made me more humble as to what life is like outside of what we have. Like I really try not to complain too much after seeing stuff like that.
Dude, yeah, that brings back. I went to the hospital in the Philippines. It wasn't me, it was somebody I was with. And they don't have like rooms per patient. Like you are in a room basically the same size as a hospital room here, but there is like 10 patients in there. And for every 10 patients, that's their families as well, and 10 beds. Yeah, it's just a whole different experience. And it goes without saying that it does not look like an American hospital. So
Right.
it looks like just any other building, really. And I agree. Like we've said this before. I think that's my biggest. I think as a person, like if you want to do the most amount of change in the least amount of time, yeah, as far as how you see the world and like your morals, your ethics, the choices you'll make in life, go to another country, and of course like a third world even, but just in general, just any other country that's like the most different than where you're currently at, you'll learn a lot.
Yeah, as a kid, I always thought it was the most stereotypical thing to hear about people who like went to Africa to build a school. And I always
Yeah.
kind of rolled my eyes. Dude, nowadays, hearing that, I'm like, dang, that would be such a cool experience to like
Oh,
go
it'd
to
be so cool.
Africa, meet the kids who are going to be being taught in that school and like build that freaking school for them. I just think that would be the coolest thing.
Dude, my cousin does that. She doesn't build the schools, but she goes and teaches English. She's done India twice and Thailand, I think. And oh man, she'll stay for like a month, and she has like the wildest stories, and it sounds awesome. I really wish I could do that. It's expensive, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's like the coolest experience.
yeah, I'd love to do that too. Awesome. Well,
Speaking
we
of
go ahead.
bribes, I want to go to the sponsor of today's podcast, Skittles. We have been bribed quite a bit today
Yes,
to
sir.
sponsor them. I actually just today, this was a care package for my girlfriend in the Philippines. The sour Skittles. So you've had sour Skittles in America, yeah?
Yes, sir.
So the sour Skittles in the Philippines don't have that like sugar coating that's on the outside. They just look like normal Skittles. So they don't have that hard sugar hit, but they taste better. They really do.
I know
So
exactly what you're talking about. They've sold it here in America before.
have they really? I've never seen it here in America,
It-
but I think it's loads better.
In America, it was called it was for Halloween. It was like Skittles Screamers, I think, and it came in orange
Mm.
packaging. And yeah, it was sour, but without that stupid coating on the outside. Super good.
Yeah, I think the sour Skittles in America with the coating, I think it's literally just a normal Skittle, and then the coating itself is the sour. But yeah,
Yeah.
the sour Skittles that in the Philippines and the ones you're talking about, like the Skittle itself is sour. It's really good. If anybody has the opportunity to try it, that's the sponsor for today's podcast, Sour Skittles. Go check it out. Dude, they have so much good candy over there, just in general. Their food is so good. Not
So
just the candy, but just the food. It's so good.
like Balut.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So what's
Yeah,
the code
that's
for
right.
them this week, Buck?
The code is greed, GREED,
For how much?
and uh, for a lot more. If you type in greed, they'll give you triple the amount. They won't give you a discount, but they'll just give you triple the Skittles.
Dang, I'd rather have that. That sounds
I
great.
know it's a good deal this week. Go check it out.
Yeah. All right, well, go check that out. We are over the hour mark, so we're gonna have to wrap it up. But usually, towards the end of the podcast, we give each other one final question. But I have an alternative this time, Buck. I'm gonna give
What's
you
your number? That's my question. What's your number to sell out?
my number.
Yeah, what amount? How much to sell out?
Well, define sellout. Like, how much money is it gonna take
Sell
me to what?
Yeah, like a corrupt dictator. Like Vladimir Putin wants you to like do a podcast about how great Russia is.
Oh, bro, I'd do next week for like $5, man.
$5. I'll say I'll say $50. 50 cents
Yeah,
to sell
okay.
out.
You're a little more
Yeah.
moral than I am.
Okay, let's just a little bit, yeah.
All right, so instead of a single question, Buck, I'm going to give you a lightning round. There are going to be
Ooh, oh
several
no.
questions. You must say yes or no on whether it is
Oh,
moral to do this thing. No explanation given.
I'm gonna get canceled. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and you can take a second to think about them. Just remember, yes or no only. You cannot explain.
Okay, this is gonna be fun.
Okay, first one. Is it moral to do insider training to pay for child surgery?
Insider trading or training
Trading.
to pay for child surgery? Yes.
Is it acceptable to obtain dirty money for charitable donations?
Mm, no.
Is it morally acceptable to sell personal data for income?
No.
Is it morally acceptable to marry for wealth?
Ooh, yes.
Huh? Okay.
That's that's good. That's good.
All right.
You're
Final
gonna
one.
make me have a whole podcast for each of these just to explain myself.
No, you're good. Final one, last one.
Okay,
Is it
okay, okay.
moral? Is it if there's already a war occurring, is it moral to try and profit from it?
Oh, in what way? Are you
I'm
not
not
allowed
gonna
to say?
I'm not gonna elaborate.
Okay. Am I allowed to profit from a war if it's already happening? Um, yes.
All right, well done. That's all. Yeah. Thank you for answering that.
Are you shocked at any of my answers? Sounds like you were shocked at the marriage one.
I'm pretty shocked in the marriage one, but
Yeah,
just we
yeah.
won't tell your
But
girlfriend about that.
I'm not allowed. No, whoa, wait a second. That is not, that is
Hopefully
not
she
what is
doesn't watch
happening.
this.
Yeah, true, true.
All right. Any
Man,
fi
that's the one I was gonna say. That's the one I need to make a. That's the one I would elaborate on if you were to let me elaborate, but not allowed.
I'm not going to.
Okay.
All right. Any final thoughts, Beck, before we wrap up the episode?
No, no. It's a good episode.
It was. All right, guys. Well, we want to thank you so much for listening. Make sure you smash the like button, subscribe, favorite, share, and follow. Go check our sponsor, skills.com. Code this week is greed. And try and get some of those Shrieker Skittles. I did find a picture. They're super good. Highly recommend. Or just import them straight from the Philippines. And if you guys
True,
have any
true,
recommendations on what topics you'd like us to cover, let us know in the comments below. Thanks so much for listening.
true.
Catch you guys next time.